candidate for governor of the great state of Ohio, I present to you Matt Mayer.
I want to thank Bruce Hooley from The Answer for being here tonight. I'm on Bruce's show every Thursday at 12:05. Listen to his show. He does a great job every day of the week from, was it 10 to 1? 11 to 1. So listen to Bruce on The Answer. If you get a chance, he does a great job digging into politics every single day. So there's a song called 40, which is a take on Psalm 40. And in it, to twist on it, the singer laments and says again and again in the song, how long must we sing this song? How long must we sing this song? And I think about that, and it echoes in my brain when I do what I do every day for Opportunity Ohio, analyzing data, trying to figure out how is Ohio doing, and I see the data again and again. And let me give you some context for why I hear, how long must we sing this song? Our private sector job growth in Ohio is among the worst in America, and has been for decades. We today, based upon the latest final numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we still have 7,500 jobs to get back before we get to the January 20 pre-pandemic level of private sector jobs in Ohio. We are only one of 11 states left to recover. 38 have already fully recovered their jobs and added some. In some cases, they doubled their jobs, where we're still trying to recover. So that's just not good, right? If you look over the last 5 years, our GDP growth is among the bottom 10 in America. Our personal income growth is among the bottom 10 in America. And that all makes sense, right? If we're not creating jobs, there won't be much competition for workers, wages won't go up. That impacts your GDP economy and it impacts your personal income, right? So those data, I hear that. Then I think about we've lost 44,000 Ohioans in the last 2 years who've gone to better, brighter pastures. Florida, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Texas, you name it. We've lost them here in Ohio. If you are outside of the greater Columbus area and the greater Cincinnati area, Ohio is hollowing out. It's literally losing people and jobs, and there's nothing much going on in those places outside of greater Columbus and greater Cincinnati. Right, so we need something that's going to reinvigorate all 88 counties, not just the 10 and 2 of the cities that are here. Our Medicaid enrollment, if you remember, we had a governor named John Kasich, kind of an annoying guy. So he expanded Medicaid, if you might remember, in 2013, and he told us then it's going to only add 275,000 people to the rolls. I said he was wrong. I said it was going to be about 1 million, right? We fought about it. He jammed it through. So here we are today. We are about 900,000 enrollees past his 275. We've added over 1.1 million people in the last decade to Medicaid. So we now have 3.6 million people on Medicaid, which is about 75% the size of Ohio's private sector. So think about it. You have one worker for every 3/4 of a person on Medicaid. That ratio is simply unhealthy for a state's economy, which is why it takes 50% of the state budget, Medicaid does, every single year. Right? So we're spending all this money on Medicaid that we can't spend on other priorities that we have across the state. Which is also why spending is going to hit over $40 billion this year. It will be a state record. The House just put out a new budget for the next 2 years. That's $86 billion in 2 years. So, right, they spend whatever comes in the door. And here's the thing. If they just were to restrain spending 10 years ago to population growth plus inflation, we could have got rid of the state income tax already. But instead, right, they're patting themselves on the back because they're going to lower the tax a bit, flatten it for a couple brackets, and they think that that's major progress. It's not progress. We have one of the highest state and local taxes in America, right? Between our state income tax and locally, right? We've got our property taxes, our income taxes, and our consumption taxes. We're rated among the worst in America. So you can't be competitive for in the 21st century with bringing big jobs, big companies, all that stuff, if you can't have a economy that is low taxation, low regulation, jobs thrive. And that's what we're missing. The Heritage Foundation came out with a ranking on school choice. We are again in the bottom third, right? We've got a supermajority in our legislature. Supermajority. We've had Republican governors now for 12 years, yet we still don't have universal school choice in this state. Right? Sarah Huckabee Sanders gets elected back in January. Within 2 months, she's passed universal school choice in Arkansas. And you're seeing it pop up in other states now, but not Ohio. They're going to pat themselves on the back because they're going to raise the eligibility a bit, and that's about it. But again, no universality. We have among the highest overdose deaths in America. We've lost 44,000 Ohioans to the fentanyl heroin epidemic that's coming out of the chemicals coming out of China, heading over to Mexico drug cartels. They're trying to cross that nice open border that Joe Biden opened up and getting into the veins of America. And Ohio is one of the worst hit states because of that, right? We keep losing more and more people. I think the number from last year they're estimating is 110,000 Americans died from opioid epidemic fentanyl overdoses. And then again, our kids are not protected from woke ideology, right? Girls are not protected in the bathroom, and we're not protecting girls on the sports pitches. And so we'll get supermajority legislature, it's happening, other states are doing it, but not Ohio. Ohio, we can't do anything. So those are the things I see every day, and I think, how long must we sing this song? When will they finally act like a supermajority instead of Illinois or New York? When will they act like they have the power to do all the good things that need to get done to make this state a beacon of freedom, hope, and prosperity? So that's why I say I've got to explore and run for governor, because I've watched for too long, I've looked at the data for too long, and I've given them lots of opportunities to get the stuff done. And every year, they refuse to get it done. So I figured, look, if we're going to get this stuff done in this state, someone's going to have to stand up and fight. And might as well be me. I'm at a point in my career, I have nothing left to lose. So, and I've got one little buddy over here, my son Sebastian, and, I'm not sure he's excited about it, but, he's been a good supporter so far. So let me run over a couple of things I want to do here in Ohio as part of my agenda. If you want to read the full agenda, go to ohiomat.com. 12 pages. Look, do not read it at 10 o'clock at night. You won't make it to 10:05, right? Read it at 7:30 in the morning with a big venti Starbucks coffee, extra caffeine, and you'll get through the whole thing. And it's tons of data, tons of detail about what I want to do and why. The most important thing to me, as a Dubliner, the most important thing to me is we are going to make it a Class 1 felony to drive under the speed limit on Dublin Road. Folks, it drives me nuts. Just drive 45 if you go down Dublin Road. Please, please, please. But on a serious note. All right, we're going to make the state a right-to-work state. We cannot be competitive with other states if we are not an economy based upon freedom. And look, the data is unequivocal on this. In my business, we call it longitudinal data. That means data that's been around for a very long time. Welcome, guys. School board member Diana Rigby. So it's longitudinal data, right? So from 1990 to this past year, 32 years. 32 years. If you are in a right-to-work state, you've netted 70% job growth in those years, which means you have about 70% more jobs than you did in 1990. In many cases, they have over 100% growth. Florida has double the number of jobs that they had in 1990, right? If you are a union state like Ohio, you're at about 31%. Okay? If you're Ohio, we're at 17%. So our private sector is literally 17% bigger than it was 32 years ago. That's bad, folks. That's just bad, no matter how you slice and dice it. And the only way for us to get more competitive is to join those states where jobs produce. And I say to my union friends, look, you can be against right to work. And all that means is your union will have less ability to negotiate wages and benefit increases because there's not much competition for workers. If we have a booming economy where there are tons of jobs, right, where workers are in demand, then your union's going to have more power to negotiate increased wages and benefits, or the company's going to risk losing those workers, right? I mean, it's kind of basic common sense, supply and demand. So I think we can get this done. It should have been done by now, but it's not. We're going to spend, I talked about my first term, we're not going to have any spending increases. I don't presume a second term, but we have to do that because we're going to spend that initial time, no increases in state spending for 4 years, so we can figure out how to get rid of the state income tax and get rid of Medicaid expansion under Obamacare as fast as we can, because that's going to be the only way that we can do it. You got to do one with the other so that we can keep more money in your pocket and let Ohio become the 10th state without income tax. That again will create a job creation. We'll have a boom here, and it'll be a very healthy place. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to decentralize state government. I don't believe for a moment that Columbus should get the largesse of all 88 counties' tax dollars that feed state government. There's no reason why we can't put the Department of Agriculture in Northwest Ohio or the Department of Natural Resources in Southeast Ohio. By having it all in one place, all that means is, essentially residents of Columbus, who are largely Democrats, are populating state government and making sure that people like me can't get things done because they slow roll reform, they oppose regulatory relief, right? And they just kind of dig in and burrow in. I dealt with it both in the Bush administration in DC as well as the Owens administration in Colorado, right? So you've got to decentralize that so that the rest of Ohio shares the largesse of state government. I also want to do some political reforms. You know, we passed term limits in this state 30 years ago. And we thought that was going to help. And unfortunately, the politicians figured out how to evade it. So they jump back and forth between the House and Senate, right? And they just keep going back and forth, and somehow the same people are still there 30 years later. At the statewide level, I call them the musical chairman, right? They sit around every year and go, okay, let's see, I'll be AG, you be Secretary of State, I'll be Auditor, you be Treasurer. Okay, it's my turn for Governor, I'll be Lieutenant Governor. And then, 8 years later, they start the music up, they switch again. So I want to replace term limits with a 20-year time limit, which is if you get elected to the legislature or statewide office, the clock starts ticking. When 20 years is up, you are out, never to be seen of again in Columbus. And my view is if you can't get what you want done in 20 years, you're not that talented, you need to get the hell out anyway, right? What else I want to do is I want to cut the pay of every legislator, the governor, including me, I'll live by this by day one, and the lieutenant governor in half. Make them eligible for 100% bonus if and only if Ohio hits the top 10 in net percentage job growth. We as conservatives have long pushed for pay performance in the classroom, right? I can't fathom why it doesn't apply just as equally to our legislature, our governor, lieutenant governor, whose jobs it is to create an environment where there's prosperity, opportunity, pro-worker, pro-business to boom this state. So if they don't deliver, they shouldn't get paid the full amount that they're getting paid today. So we're going to cut the pay, and if they want to fight against it, we'll do a ballot initiative to get it passed. Because then we'll get the right people in there who are there for the right reasons, who want to get things done, and leave when they get that stuff done. Right? So we're going to cut the pay and make some changes as quickly as we can. The other thing I think we should do is I think Ohio is in a great position to become a national voice on two key issues. You know, I'm a firm believer in the 10th Amendment. I don't think the Founding Fathers wrote it to be dismissed and minimized. And I think the states the states are where the power should be in our lives, not Washington, D.C. And so I want to make sure that we push aggressively as Ohioans to start getting power out of Washington as much as we possibly can. Because I'd rather have it in the hands of a Democrat governor and a Democrat legislature than a Republican president and a Republican Congress, because they don't get anything done there, where we can get stuff done here. And look, the bottom line is, if California wants to do a gold-plated whack job Medicaid program, I don't really care. As long as Californians are paying for that with state taxes, not federal taxes coming out of Ohio, right? So we can do common sense, let them do crazy, that's the way it should be. The other thing is, and this is what's great, right? So I started this roughly 3 months ago today, when I launched this exploratory committee. And nobody was talking about some of these issues. One of the issues I want to be the national voice for, because of the impact the opioid epidemic has had here, is I want us to be the national voice pushing aggressively to limit the immunity of the Mexican government and the Chinese government, so we can sue those governments for what they've done and failed to do when it comes to that fentanyl. You know, after 9/11, we passed a law that allowed the victims of 9/11 to sue Saudi Arabia for their role in that attack. Right? China has devastated this state. 20 years ago, when they got into the World Trade Organization, they started stealing our jobs, our technology, our IP. Right? 10 years later, they started shipping those chemicals for fentanyl to the cartels who got across that border and started killing our kids, right? Our young adults. And then 10 years later, as they shut down domestic travel coming out of Wuhan and Hubei province, they allowed international travel to go on for 2 more months to make sure that virus got everywhere, including in America, that caused over 1 million Americans to die, including 40,000 Ohioans. They need to pay for what they've done. Well, today, one of the best, I love it. A great representative, Lance Gooden out of Texas, filed a law today up in Washington to adopt my proposal. People are listening to this stuff because it's important. These are good ideas that need to get done, and we need to push aggressively to do that. And then finally, we need to safeguard our kids from woke indoctrination in the classroom, get power back in the hands of parents where it should be, right? So you guys can push back on school boards that don't deliver. We need to make sure we're protecting girls in the bathrooms and on the sports pitch, right? It's crazy when you've got Leah Thompson. You ever see that picture with poor Riley Gaines, and she's like, I mean, it's like a giant with a, and you just think, come on, folks. You can't be racing each other. It's not the way the world should work, right? Let's be common sense. Let's make sure our girls that we fought so long under Title IX to get their rights to do what they're doing aren't going to now get essentially squashed by a bunch of boys who become girls in some way, right? So we need to make sure we're safer in the classroom. So those are some of the things I want to do. I'll take questions for as long as you guys want, but the purpose of this is, Ronald Reagan said it best. He said, paint in bold colors, no pale pastels. I'm a bold color guy. I don't know how to do any other than bold, right? I mean, sometimes that's to a fault, right? But I can tell you the folks in Columbus, John Husted, Dave Yost is going to run for governor. I hear Robert Sprague's going to run for governor, and now Frank LaRose is kind of backing out of running for the Senate to try to run for governor. So it's going to be a crowded primary. I'm fine with that. The musical chairman can come on in. Water's great. But they're pale pastel. Nothing they've done in their careers as politicians has fixed this state. So we need somebody who's going to fix the state. So I'll be the bold color guy, and my hope is, once we get into charge and we start doing these things, we can start singing a different song. We don't have to sing the song of how long must we sing this song. We can sing the true song, right? We'll sing a new song of redemption, of joy, of pride in our state. The state that produced 8 presidents 100 years ago. That was the state of John D. Rockefeller, Charles Kettering, the glass industry, the rubber industry, right? We were a state of innovation. Now we're a state that has to pay $2.1 billion for a company in crisis that's bleeding market share and cash to come here to build a bunch of buildings in Lincoln County that they don't even have to fill unless they get orders. Right? That's what we're proud of. We're proud of, once every 30 years we may get something, rather than we are the state that they want to come to without being paid $2.1 billion to do it. So I want us to be proud of Ohio once again, so that we can be the state that everybody says, look what they're doing there, rather than everybody says, look what's going on in Florida, look what's going on in Texas. Ohio needs to be the place where we once again lead. So thank you for taking your time to come tonight. I greatly appreciate it. I'll answer whatever questions you might have about anything that's on your mind. So please, feel free to ask me anything. I'm pretty honest and bold about saying whatever.
Share your views. The branding has changed over the past 20 years. Outsourcing, right shoring, call it what you want, but shipping jobs overseas, including services for this company to the U.S. Department of Defense, to the Veterans Administration. We're eliminating American jobs in our own community to the detriment of us and to the state of Ohio. Share your views on that, maybe expand into bringing manufacturing to the U.S.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, look, we can compete with any country if we have the right economic environment. And the problem for Ohio is it doesn't have the environment right now, right? We have too many regulations. We're not right to work. We have a high tax, combined tax, burden. And so in order for us, I think, to try to get competitive, where we can start reshoring and be competitive, bring those things back, we've got to get Ohio in a better footing, right? And look, we've got this amazing resource on eastern Ohio, right? The Marcellus and Utica Shale, that is the access to inexpensive energy that manufacturers are dying to have. What does our governor do? Kasich? He threatens to tax them. Like, he wants to drive them out of here. Oh, wait, what? Right? So we need to leverage our resources more smartly than we have so far, and make sure that this is the place where people say, look, we've got an educated population, we've got good workers, we've got the amazing, highways that are within, 500 miles of half the U.S. consumer population, right? One of the other things that we're missing, and I feel passionate about this, look, I'm going to get rid of Jobs Ohio. That thing's, John Kasich created that, said it was the greatest thing since Jesus walked on water. We have 12 years now of Jobs Ohio doing what it does. And if you look at the line of job growth every year, it goes like this. So the longer it's been doing its job, the weaker our job growth has become. You look at the pandemic recovery, right? It's 10 years into its existence by the time that hits. Wouldn't that, if it was so good, right, wouldn't Ohio be in the top 10? How about the top 20? How about the top 30? Instead, we are 38th. That tells me it's wholly ineffective. So we need to get rid of that entity and all the bureaucrats that work for it. And what we need to do is use those funds strategically for better infrastructure. For example, I think we need to build a world-class airport in the Columbus area. Right? Denver built DIA, right, in 1995. You had landlocked Stapleton, just like we have landlocked Port Columbus, right? They built DIA 26 miles outside the city. People said, oh, they're crazy. That thing is now a hub. It's an engine of prosperity and growth in Colorado. It's booming there because of that airport. It's now the 3rd busiest airport in the world. In just, 25 years, right? We have this airport, and our airports here, we have Cincinnati, Columbus, and Cleveland, ranked 48th, 51st, and 52nd in growth. We're the 7th largest state. Columbus is the 14th largest city. Our airport's the 51st best airport in America. So if we build a world-class airport, that will allow us to say to businesses, hey, you can come here and your staff can get from here to whatever market they're looking at in one hop. Whereas, right, we lost Chiquita Brands out of Cincinnati and NCR out of Dayton because they had to hop multiple places to get to where they wanted to. And because of delays, cancellations, all that fun stuff, right, they said forget it. So one moved to Atlanta, busiest airport in the world, and one moved to Charlotte, sixth busiest airport in the world, right? So if we build that airport, we can become this hub that then not just good for business here, or business to attract to come here, but guess what? I don't know about you guys, I travel a lot. My son and I, we travel all the time. I get so sick having to fly somewhere to get to where we want to go. The fact that we don't have a direct flight from Columbus to Europe is absurd. Right? We got to pay one airline to go to Cincinnati starting in June, I think. We got to pay them to do it. We got to pay one in Cleveland to go to Ireland starting, I think, in May, maybe. Right? But we have enough people here that this should be a draw. And we should then go to American, United, and Southwest and say, do you want to stay in high-tax Illinois? You want to stay where they're rioting and they're breaking into stores and they're stealing, and you get hit with lake effect every single winter where there's delays and cancellations all up at O'Hara and Midway? Or you move your operations down to Columbus and you're not going to have to deal with that kind of weather anymore, so you're going to make more money as an airline, your customers are going to be happy as an airline, and Ohioans, we're going to benefit. So those are the things I think we need to do if we want this state really to prosper and boom. Right? What other questions? Yeah.
Well, one thing, you're going to have more workers, you need more people. And it seems to me a good way to have more people is to have fewer abortions. And so, and I know that the pro-death law, he wants to put something on the ballot and want to block this. But why can't we just go back to the free Roe versus Wade law of no abortion, period? As you said, we've got the super majority and the governor. Well, why can't we just do that? To just ban abortion like it was before. And some people thought Roe versus Wade would never be overturned, but it was. So, well, why can't we do that for the unborn?
Well, so look, I mean, the Dobbs decision was a good decision because it's put power back into the hands of the states, which is where I believe it actually should be. Which just doesn't mean that they should try to do something at the federal level. They can try, right? But the fight's going to be here. And if you read my document, you'll see pretty clearly, I try to take a scientific approach to the life issue, which is, right, I want to use the left's language against them. We define death as the absence of a heartbeat and a brainwave, right? Well, so we need to define life by the presence of those things. Because when there's a heartbeat and a brainwave, there's not a physician on earth that can say that that baby doesn't think, feel, emote, dream, right? Experience pain the same way you and I do. So at a minimum, we've got to protect life at that point, at a minimum. And then let's have the debate about how much farther back we can then push it from there, and what exceptions we should have. But let's have a robust debate here, and let's try to be a state that protects life to the fullest degree we can, in order to make sure that this state is a state that prospers. But we also have to do more than just protect life to grow. We have to also be a state where people want to move to. Right? I have two college-age daughters. One's in Virginia and one's in Texas in college because they don't see the opportunity and prosperity here. So right, once they're heading to states that they deem to be more prosperous in places that they think are going to be more opportunities when they graduate from college. So we've got to be smarter about how we're doing that so we keep the best and brightest instead of losing them as we are to the south and west of the country. Yeah, Bill.
Matt, so what's their excuse? Right? I mean,
who? The legislature?
Yeah, my personal belief is that Ohio has the resources. You know, like you mentioned, the energy, the fresh water, the rivers, the freeways, right? The skilled population, the moderate climate. What's their excuse that we're not in the top 10, we're in the bottom 12?
Yeah, they don't make excuses. I mean, this is the problem, right? They're not, so they're never held accountable by voters, which they aren't, right? Too many Republican voters keep voting for Mike DeWine, John Husted, all the same legislators, for getting what done, right? So one, we voters have not held them accountable. The media, that never holds them accountable. I mean, I talk about this all the time when I get into it with the media, and I say, why am I the only guy talking about the failure of Jobs Ohio? Like, it's not my data. This is objective data you look at. Where are you asking the tough questions to the head of Jobs Ohio, to Mike DeWine and John Husted? Are you going to reform this thing at a minimum or get rid of it? It's not working. It's been 12 years. Look what happened. The line goes down, right? So there's not the accountability we need, which is why when we get in charge, I'm going to name names. If there's a legislator who's not going to support our agenda, we're going to name them, we're going to find somebody to go against them, we're going to raise money, and we're going to take them out of the legislature. I'm not going to play around with this stuff. And if they still fight, we're going to put it on the ballot to get it done. This stuff has got to get done. But right now, they're just so dumb, fat, and happy, right? They spend what comes in, they pretend that they're doing conservative things. And I was up in Summit County 2 Thursdays ago. Ron DeSantis was speaking. And I don't care if you're a Trump DeSantis, I don't want to get into the presidential fight, but what Ron DeSantis has done in Florida has been outstanding, right? That state is #1 in virtually every category that you want to be #1 in. And so he's running through this list, and I'm in the room with about 12 senators and state reps. And I'm thinking to myself, I hope they're sitting there going, he didn't have a supermajority until after this past election. We've had a supermajority for years, and yet we're not getting any of this stuff done. And why not? Because Mike DeWine does not lead. He's a moderate. He's always been a moderate. He's not interested in tough fights, right? So we need a governor who's going to lead the way DeSantis does in Florida, Abbott does in Texas. And so I was talking to somebody before the event, and they're so right. The left gets a hold of a legislature in the governor's office by, let's say, 2 seats majority up in Michigan. They don't care. They start passing everything right away. Repeal right to work, repeal this, do that. We get in there, we're like, oh, we only have a supermajority. What should we do? Like, use the power, right? Or what's the point otherwise? Yeah.
Well, the reason they're moderates is because you have a certain area that's real blue, right?
A couple areas.
And so you take a look around and everything I'm hearing is getting to the point where you hear people openly talking about national wars, civil wars, things like that, right? To me, it strikes me as a much simpler way. You simply follow the West Virginia model. You carve out Youngstown, Cleveland, make them their own state, make them live by themselves. But if Ohio was to do that, it would send a shot across the bow because Illinois should be doing that. California should be doing that. Washington should be doing that. You're already seeing these counties trying to annex themselves to other areas. But to me, I mean, you got half of America believe men can get pregnant. You're not going to be able to deal reasonably with those kind of people. They're there to be an obstruction. They're there to make sure you don't get what you want. It's a retribution type of a policy. They don't even love America. I mean, they hate capitalism. So you're never going to be able to agree with them or ever get them to do what's good for America because that's not in their interest. They'll burn down cities to get their way.
Yeah, but I don't need to do that because I'm in Ohio and I'm trying to fix Ohio, right? And in Ohio, we're red as red can be. We may have some blue spots. I don't want to divorce those folks. I want to try to figure out how to get more of them into fold, right? By being bold, by creating a bold economy for them that they then say, wow, this is what we like, right? But we win in Ohio. So there's no excuse why red state like this, where Trump won 8% twice, supermajority legislature, there's no reason we are doing all of these amazing things that we read every day are happening in every other state that's red. We act like we are Illinois and New York rather than, right, Florida and Texas. That doesn't make sense to me at all, and we got to change that right away. Mark.
Yeah, so Matt, Republicans think that if you pass universal vouchers, you fix education. They're wrong. Democrats think that if you just give education a lot more money, you fix it. They're wrong. How do you fix education?
Well, Mark, you're going to disagree with me, but I think one good starting point is universal school choice. I mean, I think we've got to get universal school choice passed in the state, that every state dollar follows the kid, and I think that in key places that will start spurring reform elsewhere. Because I think fundamentally, we fought the SB 5 battle 11 years ago. We lost that battle. It wasn't fought the right way, but we lost it. We're not going to fight it again. Voters spoke, right? So we've got to figure out another way to get reform within the systems that aren't working, free kids in their families so that they can go to schools that work or that they want to go to. So that's one way to start the process, right? Empowering parents is another way. We've got to make sure parents have power to make sure that we're not getting all this stuff happening in the classroom that should be happening. The classroom should be spent on math, reading, science, history, not woke ideology, and not some of the stuff we force these kids to take now. It doesn't make sense that we're forcing kids to take, music, choir, or band, rather than right, coding or shop, where they start learning something that may spur a passion for them that leads on a different pathway. But instead we're forcing every 6th grader in Dublin, for example, to take choir, band, or orchestra. So he's got to sit through, what, this 47 minutes a day, every other day? Yeah, so every day he's got to sit in choir class, which is just a waste of time. He doesn't want to be there. It's not teaching him anything. He could be doing coding. He could be doing some shop, maybe making a birdhouse that teaches how to use his hands and a practical skill. But instead, he sits there and goes, right? So we've got to figure out ways to fix the system. And then getting power parents and putting more power in the hands of parents and their kids is the one way to do that. It's not the panacea, I know.
Would you eliminate local control?
No, I want to give more local control. I want to get the state and federal government out of it. I want to have more. I want all power to be as local as we can and empower parents in front of the school boards to be able to make sure that they get the changes they want.
Okay, Dublin's always going to require choir.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I believe people will speak differently, and we get Diana more support on the board. She'll hopefully start doing some stuff that she can get done. Yeah.
Well, you talked about the departments that get them kind of geographically decentralized. Let me ask you about one of the departments and something that happened in 2019. Ohio Department of Ed, new social emotional learning standards.
Yeah.
2019, and then what was that? The pandemic shut down all the schools, created a mental health crisis that only the government can solve. And since then, the past few years, like what's happened in the department? We've added new layers of establishment. We've got more social workers. They're going to keep increasing this. They're going to say mental health. How do you unravel the department? And how do you fix a problem without being called someone that doesn't care about mental health?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you got to be smart about it, right? If we're spending all this pandemic money on paying for teachers to go get, or not even teachers in that case, go get their masters in social work, so then we add them into the school system, and these people are barely qualified, right? And so, we need to be concerned about mental health, right? The DeWine Hewstead shutdown that severely hurt our education system and our businesses, right? That's real. The mental health crisis that created among kids is real. So we've got to have the support structure in place for them. But the idea that we need to kind of waste valuable time with every student in a school on SEL every day or once a week, whatever it might be, I don't think that makes sense. So we need to make sure parents know what's going on so that then they can go to their school board and say, whoa, why are we doing this every week? So I think the more we can inform parents, and we'll have a big bully pulpit when I'm governor to make sure that parents are getting through this information. We'll do all the kind of outreach we can through the Department of Education in the right way, right, to make sure they know what's going on in their school district so that they can then go to that school board and say, whoa, what are you doing here, chief? Right? So accountability is going to be key. Yeah.
So what is your plan for getting all the illegal drugs out of this state? And then what would you do, what would you provide in order to service those that are dealing with drug addiction and the mental illness that we just mentioned? I mean, that's very realistic, and it's not just children. I mean, it's like we just want to ignore it. So what would you do to provide care for those that are doing it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So I think there are a couple things that we've got to do, right? Number one, we've got to do whatever we can from our state perspective to help shut down the southern border and make sure that some of that stuff never comes across, whether it's the human trafficking or the drugs, right? It's one of the things I've written about this for quite a while. I think 5 years ago when I first said it, 6 years ago. Now more people are saying it. If America's going to spend money fighting a war, it better not be over in Europe. How about we fight a war on our southern border with the cartels that are crushing our country with trafficking, drugs, crime, violence, terrorism, right? So one, it's got to start at the border. Two, I think we've got to make sure that we implement E-Verify for every business in this state to make sure that we're not hiring and being a magnet for illegal labor, right? To keep those folks out. We've got to make sure we work closely with Immigration Customs Enforcement and local law enforcement. Both goes up to make sure they're shutting down those corridors on 71, 70, 77, 75 to make sure that the drug runners and the traffickers that are hitting those places are caught and dealt severely with by increasing the penalties that are going to hopefully put those folks away for a very long time or worse, right? And then when it gets to the treatment side, we've got to make sure we have the right approach to help folks who need the help, to get them off of those drugs, get them clean, and get them back into a prosperous lifestyle, right? Because fundamentally, we've got to a lot of the opioids took root in those very places where the Chinese government took all those jobs, right? They lost hope. And where there was no hope, right, they replaced that with the drugs to kind of numb themselves, right? Alcohol, drugs. And so that's where you see so much of the opioid hit. So we need to restore hope to those communities to make sure that those folks have the opportunity because, right, everybody needs a hand up every now and again. So we need to make sure the resources are there. But when we're spending half of our budget on Medicaid, all we're incentivizing is healthy, this is who's benefited, healthy young men to not have to go get a real job, get health care because they're getting it for free from Medicaid. That's what's occurred. So we got to pull that back so we have the resources to put into mental health treatment in the right way, right?
Yeah, so you got to make sure that the drugs, those that are dealing with drug addiction, it's a serious issue.
Absolutely.
And it has nothing to do with your level of income.
Absolutely not.
Or whoever's taking what jobs. I mean, it can be in, you know, your old attendees in Dublin, and it can be out in your
It is in Montana and Dublin. I know people who suffer discouraged with their kids with these issues. So it is not a theoretical, only the kids in Columbus are dealing with. This is it hits every economic, social, racial, class hard. And so we've got to be there for everybody.
So along with that, the law enforcement. Obviously, we're tying their hands and there's lack of support in helping them do their job. What's your position on that?
We're not going to tie their hands. We're going to be behind them 100%. We're going to make sure they have everything they need to do their jobs. We're going to have their back at all times. And Bruce talks about this all the time on his show, right? Where these kids are being killed for going to get gas because somebody, right? And Andrew Ginther doesn't know anything about it. Or we're going to push back and get more aggressive on Mr. Ginther, right? Because that can't happen. People need to feel safe in their community. So we're going to make sure law enforcement has, we have their back at all times, and they have the resources to do what they do. And that's going to be, and we're going to make sure we work with, again, federal law enforcement where we can on the legal issues, on the criminal issues, so that we can make sure we get the state as safe as possible for its constituents. Yeah. Yeah, Stephanie.
I'm interested in knowing what are the performance standards and measures of our state agencies. For example, the Office of Medicaid with the pharmacy benefit manager debacle was ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, in those situations, people would have lost their jobs. Many people would have lost their jobs for such poor decision making. Our health statistics are horrible in the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
The infant mortality rates, all kinds of measures across the board. And things seem to go along, and there isn't a report card that I know of for those state agencies with outcome measures that tell us they're really benefiting our population in all quarters of our state. In Appalachia or in the Northwest, every area has problems. And I don't see any really thoughtful solutions coming out of our state agencies that we pay to address those things.
Yeah, so that's why if you read my proposal, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to, week one, right, I'm going to put together a team of non-state workers, right, these are folks I know are good at these things, and we're going to dig into the bowels of government. It's going to be like an endoscopy and a colonoscopy all at once, right? No, I'm serious. And we are going to, this is what we had to do in Colorado, right? We're going to dig deeply into the bowels of government to figure out what's working, what isn't, what can be fixed, and figure out what should be eliminated, what should be supported more, what can be fixed, to make sure that Ohio state government is operating on all cylinders for taxpayers. Because, again, if you think about how much money gets spent by state government, the fact that that's not done today is crazy. Right, so we're going to get in there and dig. I'm going to give us a year to get that done, to make sure that we dig in quickly, deeply on every program to see what is the success, what are the metrics being used, because it doesn't work very well. So whatever's happening needs to be changed and reformed in the right way, right? Yeah.
So you're right, the musical chairman will love to push you aside. So what's your path? Give us a vision of how you overcome that.
How I win?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I know it takes money. Unfortunately, the system is the system.
Yeah.
And it would be awesome if we could believe that a citizen can ascend to that office and bring some radical change. Tell me how it works. Give me your vision for it.
Yeah, so great question. So look, this is not a job I need. I'm perfectly happy hanging out with my son back at home and doing the things we do every day, right? But something's got to change. Now, I believe John Huston's getting in the race, Dave Yost is going to get in the race, and I think Robert Sprague. So those three for sure. I welcome that, right? As iron strengthens iron, one man strengthens another, right? So my view is they're going to split the establishment vote. That allows a guy like me with grassroots support, which I think I'll have, to win at 38% of the vote. right? The money is an interesting piece, right? Because I don't think I'm going to need as much as they're going to need. They've got to think like John Houston's got to essentially run a campaign that says, I wasn't part of the shutdown guys, I wasn't the guy whose job growth was, right? He's got this whole record I went through about how bad things are, right? So he's going to need a lot of money to try to escape that. I won't need that much money, but I know I'll have enough to be competitive, which is why I'm taking this 1.5 years to explore, so that if we pull the trigger next July, next November, I know I'm going to have the money and the grassroots to win. I'm not doing this for fun, right? And so part of that is, this happens every day, right? So I hear from one of the bigger donors who likes what I'm doing and supporting me, that, this guy was in his office saying da-da-da, and he said, well, you're a nice guy, Dave, but I really like Matt's agenda, right? The more they hear that, the better. And when 3 of these guys are popping into all the same offices, because there's only like 100 people that can fund the big checks, right? It's going to freeze them. They're not going to get involved. They're going to be like, we're going to stay out of this in order to make sure we don't pick the wrong horse. That helps me out. Every defensive play where they can't raise money from one of the big dogs allows somebody like me more and more space, right? So I think there's a clear path. And I've hit 23 counties. I'm telling you, the response everywhere I go is incredibly positive. People love the agenda. They love the colors. So I think we've got the right lane. Because if we talk about this today on the radio, right, you've got to have a lane. My lane is very clear, and I'm the only one in it.
Can anybody steal your lane?
They can try, but they're going to have to knock you down to do it. Good luck with that. Right? They don't have the ideas and the data and the know-how that I've got.
Well, to steal your lane, is steal your own.
Yeah, but I got up there first, so they're just going to be Me Too at this point. We know how we feel about Me Too.
Just out of curiosity, how much money do you think it takes to run that kind of a campaign?
To win the primary, I think I probably would need to raise between $3 and $4 million to win the primary. And whoever wins the primary, I think wins the general, because I think we're red state, right?
Is anything about the Republican Central Committee reforms? I know they tried to keep there from being endorsements of Republicans before.
Yeah, that's another key place. Yeah, it helps me. So we're playing aggressive defense with the Republican State Central Committee, because what happens is, right, they keep endorsing candidates, and when they do that, that means they appear on the slate card that gets sent to every single Republican voter, and a lot of voters, not surprisingly, don't get engaged like you folks are, and so they take the slate card into the ballot box, and they go, oh, John Houston, he's got my vote, right? So we're working to get that. It's a 50% now, 50 plus 1. We're going to try to get that at least to 60% to get endorsements and fight off the endorsements. Again, this is where it'd be great if Dave's in and John's in and Robert's in. They're going to fight amongst that. Nobody's going to get 60% of the vote, right? So that nobody getting endorsed helps me win at the end of the day. Yeah.
We talked about mental health. Obviously, we want to go toward mental health for our students, but my concern is, what do you think the state's responsibility, if any, for the physical well-being of our students? In other words, a school resource officer in all of Ohio's public schools, what would be your thought?
Yeah, so my thought would be the more school resource officers that we can get inside the buildings to make sure that somebody's present to keep our kids safe is a good idea, right? Now, who should fund that? Is that a local thing or a state thing? Let's have that discussion, right? I'm open to that idea that we could help that program, but fundamentally, right, I think it has to come from the state or the school boards to say that that's something that's important enough to them that it makes an agenda for us. Because, I think it's kind of a common sense thing, right? Like, let's make sure we keep everybody as safe as possible so the kids can focus on learning, the teachers can focus on teaching, and no one's going to worry about bad things happening. Because bad things will happen, right? We just got to make sure they don't happen in our state, right?
Take 87,000 IRS agents, and you hire them and put those in every school as security officers.
Among other things, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
When I went to college, right, I took out a loan. The school voucher. I looked around, chose the school I wanted to. When I go there, I have a certain amount of dollars.
Yeah.
I know each one of these classes is going to cost me so much. I choose them, I build my own career. Then I go teach at Ohio State, right? If I did a good job, I get more students, right? Those kids, they got a great micro-professor. They got a teacher, right?
Right.
Those kids, you get to measure me because the kids come out of there, you then sit there and tag me to the test scores. Okay, now, how much do you spend on school here for a student at Dublin? $16,000, $17,000?
I think it's a little over 14.5.
14.5. Okay, you give a kid, you give a parent 14.5. You give them a curriculum where they can choose from, okay? You let them choose the teacher you want, right? That's going to solve almost every problem you've got in education. That's how it works in the college system. I don't know why the government has had so much control over the education where you can choose the curriculum of your child. You've got a standardized test, you know what they need to take, right? And the parents and the kids can decide what teacher to take because you're going to tag those to the test scores. Because right now you have teachers that probably don't even know their material. There's districts that have children graduating with no proficiency, and they'll keep their job. There's no accountability in the system.
Right, and look, you know, first of all, I think we test too much, right? And you gotta bring that down a notch. But that's why homeschooling is exploding in America, right? Is because more and more parents are saying, I want control of my kid's education and I can do a better job than I see happening in their school system. That's why University of Ohio will also include homeschool kids. They take their money and they can use it at home to get the resources at home that they need to do the job they need. But look, higher ed needs reform in the state as well, right? I mean, I think Ohio State has now gotten more concerned about how many hospital beds it has than what students are doing. So I think they actually have more hospital beds in the system than they do kids now. And we got to get back to primary issue, which is make sure our kids are graduating from our premier institutions, public institutions, the most prepared, well-taught kids possible. And so we've got to get professors who aren't spending, you know, they teach one class a year so they can do a bunch of consulting contracts or write mumbo-jumbo journals that nobody cares about. Make sure we get them teaching again. We got to make sure we identify who are the best teachers and use technology to get those teachers in every classroom in higher ed across the state, right? If it's a professor at state, great, they're going to pipe into 12 different colleges because we've identified them as the best. So we've got to do some reforms of our higher ed to make sure that the money goes there and gets the results we want, right?
One last thing on that, though. One last thing on that. You got $14,000. Your kid doesn't spend $14,000, right? Let's say you spend 12. That allows you $2,000 to put into a 529 account to pay for the college as well. Because the amount of money you're spending on public schools, you can easily fund primary school and education, college.
You're saying it's a voucher, the value of the voucher.
It goes total towards education, 529 more for the.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that, making eligible for 529 money for K-12. I have to think about that, but that's an interesting idea. So yeah, it's something to think about for sure, right? Because 529 is a great vehicle. Any other questions? Yeah, JD?
It's early.
It is early.
If you could pick what type of person would you like as your lieutenant governor?
Oh dear God.
What would you be looking for? I'm not
So good question. I haven't thought about it honestly, because right, there's so much more work that has to happen before I have to worry about getting form signed that has another name on it. But I think ideally it would be somebody from outside the greater Columbus and greater Cincinnati area, because I'm running against those places, even though I live in them. I'd love somebody with deep business experience, because we have such an aggressive agenda that I'm going to need somebody that I can say, I need you to do the bowels of government and local reform and higher ed reform. So lead those efforts, and I can trust that they know what they're doing. So I'm going to need somebody who looks at the world like I do and has the experience to really do some interesting things, so I can take stuff off my plate I can't fight, because I'm going to have enough fights with the legislature on enough things that I need to make sure that stuff is getting done so we can get the state moving forward. So I don't know other than that, right? Yeah.
One thing I want to revisit is like a bad dream would not end at a pandemic lockdown.
Yeah.
We had a governor on TV day after day giving the most torturous 3 or 4 hour infomercials, what I would call them. And he would have middle facts. You could get a jab in your arm, a dangerous injection, so you could win a lottery.
Vaximillion. We had the Vaximillion program.
Yeah, I mean, just the worst things. Tell us how we should wear our masks and everything. And he's getting these injections, which were, I think, have done more harm than good. How can you assure us? What do you think you assure us that you get as governor that we would never go down this lockdown road, which I think frankly is just one big social engineering project?
Yeah, I can tell you, because we're not going to have mandates. We're not going to shut down states. We're not going to shut down schools. Period. The data is in. We knew the data beforehand. Masks didn't work, right? Shutdowns were going to be terrible for kids and harming people's people at the pocketbook. So, because we will have another virus come over from China. Like, trust me, it'll happen, right? We are not going to shut down the state. We are going to be more like Kristi Noem in South Dakota, DeSantis down in Florida, keep the state open to every degree. And I will fight every mandate coming out of Washington because I love the 10th Amendment, and we will spend money fighting those fights as aggressive as we can. Yeah, George. Last question, then we can have some cake.
I just have a comment.
I knew it wasn't a question, George.
It's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and that is the concept of competition. We all know that competition produces excellence, and when it achieves that, it usually produces a cheaper, less costly product. What would a scenario be, and I'm just throwing it out there for you to consider it, that if we created in the state of Ohio, sort of say 3 classes of high schools, A, B, and C, based on size, and then we pit them academically against one another and test them at the end of the year to see where everybody is, and let them claw and intellectualize for superiority in their individual races. I think that would go a long way to helping out on reading, writing, arithmetic, and civic instruction, which I think are the 4 basic things that we should concern ourselves with in K-12 education.
Yeah, look, George, great non-question. And I'm open to all the above strategy on trying to make our schools better, right? So if we can create competitive, because look, competition's in our DNA as Americans, right? We love it, we thrive on it, right? That's why my son watches all the NBA games, and we watch soccer and football on TV because we love competition, love the fight, right? And that's why I want competitive federalism. I want to do the 10th Amendment, right? Because I want to be able to fight for other states to see that we can do better here, and that will draw people because people vote for their feet. Well, I want to say the same thing should happen. If we can figure out a way to do that in education, then let's do it, right? I'm all about competition, and so I agree with you 100%, right? All right, listen, you guys, thank you so much for coming. Go to the website. Let's get some cake in the back.
Two quick thank yous. One is to all of you taking time out of your evening to come here, travel here, and be a part of this. It's one of the most important things you can do. I'm going to encourage you in the future, bring a friend. We'll have the room, we'll expand the room, whatever it's got to take to get the job done. The other person I want to thank is Matt Mayer for coming out tonight, taking on this challenge, taking on the fight, and all the challenges he's going to face going forward. But as a little thank you gift, a very prestigious gift, I might add.
Like a cup?
Yes, almost maybe better, right? He is being awarded an honorary membership in the Dublin Republican Club.